subscribe, turn on post notifications so you're notified whenever I post a new video. Y'all, this is part 2. If you didn't watch part 1, I'm literally recording it in one setting. I just had to separate the video because it is long. If you didn't watch part 1, I highly suggest you go watch it before we continue with this one, just so that you're like up to date or whatever. But this is part 2, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's on The Breakfast Club. I'm not gonna lie, he's dropping some gems. He's dropping some gems. You already know, I already fully expressed prior that I was very, very intrigued by his campaign, because I'm just intrigued with different, like people who are different, even though his last name is not different, but the way he maneuvered and the way he came out of nowhere, not necessarily nowhere, but came and decided to primary Joe Biden, that really was like, okay, what does he have to offer? So I've been following his campaign here and there, really want to do a sit down interview with him. So just putting that out there, because you never know who's watching. If you know, you know. With that being said, we're just going to continue part 2, and yeah.
So let's talk about some of the things you stand on, lowering taxes, healthcare, and all that. So how do you propose to do some of the things that you want to get into play?
That's a huge question, and we could spend 3 hours here, but let me just tell you one of the things I'm going to do as soon as I get into office. Right now, one of the big issues is equity, and particularly in the black community. There's the equity, the black community by 2030 will have virtually zero equity. Through a series of different policies, going back to the mushroom loans in 2008, which were tried out first in the black community, the equity, the housing has been taken away, which was, if you have a house, you can get a loan and you can build a business. If you don't have a house, you have no access to capital. It's very important to get homes into those communities. There's a bunch of issues that are across the working class in this country are important. Child care is critically important. Good health care is important. But housing is probably the most important issue in terms of building wealth in poor communities. So 2 years ago, the average cost of a house in this country was $215,000. Today it's $400,000. And the interest rates you're going to pay on that house have gone from 1% to 7%. So you're paying 10 times as much for that house you were 2 years ago. I have 7 kids. They're all between 20, 35 years old. They should be moving into their own homes. But I don't know any of them or any of their friends who are actually buying a home now. And one of the reasons for why did the price of housing go up? Well, one, because of the inflation, because we spent $8 trillion on wars and $16 trillion on COVID, which we didn't have. So they print money, which caused the price of everything to go up. More importantly, there's 3 giant corporations, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, which own,
I know about Vanguard.
They own each other, so it's really one giant corporation. But they also own 89% of the S&P 500. They own everything. They've now decided to buy every single family home in America. So if they stay on the current trajectory, they will own 60% of the homes in this country, single family homes, by 2030. They literally are trying to buy everything. And the head of it, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, is on the board of the World Economic Forum, and what they've said, we want this great reset, which is you will own nothing.
Right hand to God, some of these people you will have to explain. I hope you can explain the amount of greed that you have when we stand before God. Like the fact that housing has become a business, the fact that people can't obtain ownership and a roof over their head because it's become a business. Are you, bro? Even with renting, like it's always money. You can do all you can to have as much money as you want today, sweetheart. Your bank account can have millions upon billions, whatever it may be. You can die tomorrow. Now what? Hello, what's not clicking? Like, some of these people don't, like, they don't understand. They have no identity outside of wealth, no identity outside of money, no identity outside of power. They think that's all this is. You think you can take that with you? One thing no one can escape in this life is death. So when your time comes and you've wasted your entire life trying to build up all this wealth and money and power, doop-de-doop, and you die and you stand before God, now what? You think you're going to take that with you in the gates? And you think, okay, that's cute.
And you will be happy. Well, they're on their way to making sure that we don't own anything. So you all probably have heard of people who are about to buy a home, and somebody comes in at the last minute with a cash or offer and snatches it out of the market.
Right.
And it's usually an LLC with an ambiguous name. But if you trace that up, you'll find it's owned by BlackRock.
Wow.
And because they have a huge bank book, the cost of money and interest to them is tiny, which means they can outcompete your children. Your kids do not have a chance to buy that home because they can't outcompete BlackRock.
And what in this administration did you see that made you say, I have to run? What didn't
Well,
you like?
the things that pushed me over the edge were the war, Ukraine war, and COVID. I just saw that the total mismanagement that was occurring in those areas.
So the one thing that I want to say with in regards to housing, something that I noticed, even in this country, you don't own it. No one actually, you really don't own it. You can buy your house, pay it off. Sweetheart, property taxes, hello. Knock, knock, property taxes. As opposed to when you go to like Mexico, when you go to Nigeria, when you go to Ghana, when you go to all these different countries, when you buy your property, that's yours. It's yours. The only thing you pay for is what, like your electric or whatever and your water to keep it running, but everything else is yours. Nowadays, property taxes is like rising up to where it's like you're pretty much paying rent. After you paid off your house, congratulations, yeah, you pay your property taxes, you're paying rent at that point because you don't own it.
People in this country just getting crucified. But let me tell you what I'm going to do, because you asked me what I'll do, so I'll be very quick. One thing, I'm going to change the tax code to make it unprofitable for those companies to compete against your children for housing. Number two, I'm going to make a mortgage available to Americans at 3% interest. And I'm going to do that without raising the debt. And the way I'm going to do it, if you have a rich uncle who will co-sign your mortgage, you can get a very cheap mortgage because the bank is basing the interest rates on his credit score rather than yours. Oh, I'm going to give everybody a rich uncle. I'm going to say Uncle Sam is going to co-sign this new class of mortgages and guarantee them at 3%. That will lower the cost of mortgages by $1,000 to every American in an average home, by $1,000 a month. And it will allow them to outcompete BlackRock. And I'm going to guarantee those, I'm going to finance those mortgages by selling tax-free bonds on the open market. So it won't be sold, it won't be financed with federal tax dollars and contribute to this incredible debt that we have.
Right.
But that, and I'm going to give the first 500,000 of those to teachers, and those will only be available to first-time home buyers who will live in that community, who will work in that community, starting with teachers, because we need to create housing for teachers to keep the best teachers in our schools. So that's one of the things I'll do.
Hell yeah.
That sounds good.
Mr. Kenny, can I go back a little bit?
That sounds really good, but will it happen? Can it happen? That sounds like a really good plan. I'm not gonna lie, y'all, but can it happen? That's
because I appreciate you recognizing the income gap, the wealth ratio between, African Americans and everybody else. You also mentioned equity is important. And I thought it was interesting that you mentioned how cash offers were able to outbuy us with homes. Can you explain to me why? I know you support reparations, but you are against cash payments being a part of that package. Is that my understanding?
Well, here's my issue. First of all, I fought for reparations for indigenous people, for Indians, for 35 years. I represented them in many, many lawsuits and treaty negotiations in Canada, the United States, and fought for reparations. And I think there's a clear moral case for reparations for blacks in this country who are the descendants of slaves. Mm-hmm. There's two impediments to that. One is that, the slavery did not end the structural racism against blacks and the destruction of the
Yeah, Jim Crow, you had the war on
right.
drugs.
And I grew up in a Jim Crow state. When I grew up in Virginia, blacks were not allowed to marry whites. I had a guy, a handyman who worked for my family, was a World War II vet. Blacks were not allowed to fight in World War II, but he had been in the Seabees, the Pacific. He had seen combat. He was 6'5", incredibly dignified, smart man.
Let me keep my thoughts to myself.
I loved hunting and fishing when I was a kid. And
About
he
that
and I
one.
would go all over the state of Virginia and do that. And whenever we stopped at a restaurant, I had to go in, buy the food, and come out, and we would eat it together in the car. He picked me up one day and asked me to come downtown to Salona, to the little village that's in the town that we lived in, to buy shoes for him because he was not allowed in the shoe store. And so I went in, bought the shoe size he wanted. He tried them out on the curb. If they didn't fit him, he could not return them. And in that day, blacks were famous for having corns on their feet and sore feet, and that's why, because they were, once they tried on a shoe, they could not. They had to take that shoe, whatever they tried it. Well, I saw it. It was 300 years of that. And, that's why I favored affirmative action, because you can't correct that in 50 years of finally allowing blacks to get into college. Also favored affirmative action because whites have an affirmative action program, and it's called Legacy, which is
Y'all, if I said the same thing, my main thing was this. I was like, okay, they took away affirmative action. My thing was like, okay, if you're going to take it away, that's fine. But let's talk about legacy awards or like legacy admissions. Like, you can't, like, that's why I'm just so confused with these people that say, oh, affirmative action, this and the third. We got to do the same thing with legacy. Like, be for real. Like, if a legacy's going to stay there, then keep affirmative action. That's my argument. If you're going to take away affirmative action, take away every other form of privilege or whatever you want to call it. Like, this man is speaking
only really
facts.
available to whites, and it has nothing to do with merit. Oh,
Thank you.
I
Nothing
favor
to do
those
with
things.
merit.
Now, the recent decision, the Harvard decision by Justice Roberts, has made clear that any race-based reparations are just based on race and based on that structural racism that took place since the Civil War would be illegal, unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment. There's still, however, an argument that blacks who were subject to slavery in this country could still be entitled to reparations in the same way that the Korematsu case allowed Japanese to get reparations after the internment camps in World War II. After the Civil War, blacks were promised 40 acres and a mule, and many of them were given that promise, but it was immediately taken away from them when Lincoln was killed and Andrew Johnson took over. Virtually all of that land was stripped from blacks. So you can make a good argument that those reparations are forthcoming. Mm-hmm. There's a bigger political impediment, which is that you need legislation to do that, which means you have to get it through Republican and Democratic controlled houses.
It's never going.
I'm going to be honest. Charlamagne's just about to say what I was going to say. I'm going to be honest for all the descendants of slaves out there. Because not all black people are descendants of slaves. You're not getting reparations. I'm just being honest. That's why whenever anybody comes out and say, I'm going to give you reparations as president or whatever form, whatever public seat holder they're I'm going to fight for reparations. I'm going to do this. They know they can't. They know they can't. That's why I appreciate him for saying he supports it, but he knows he can't. He knows he can't do it. It's never gonna happen. Maybe I should be optimistic. Maybe I should say one day, by the grace of God, maybe. I'm just being realistic. Like, it's never gonna happen. That's the unfortunate part.
And it's not going to happen. And a lot of people I had ancestors who fought in the Civil War. There are a lot of people on the north side, 350,000 people who died in the Civil War trying to get rid of slavery, and they would, those people could legitimately claim, well, we already made our sacrifice. Why are you coming after us? There's people in this country and parts of this country that never had slavery. And
Well,
they can,
I
they can
disagree- I
complain.
disagree
So
with
that's all I'm saying, that there are, they're just impediments. And what I say is that, my focus because of that has been on two things, which is, how do you build businesses in black communities? Because, people are trying to get rid of structural racism and racist feelings in kids by.
He talks with substance, but he has to cut down his answers a little bit. With Tez, I think, because he knows Tez is probably like a firecracker and will hold anybody accountable. So he probably seen like previous interviews. But I think she was trying to say something in regards to the reparations portion. But let's see.
It'll never happen. There's structural racism. It's part of our hardwiring. We are tribal. People are tribal. They look for differences in other people, whether it's race, whether it's a uniform, whether it's religion or whatever. But our minds are like cell phone, looking for a tower. We're always looking for differences that we can make, and you're not going to get rid of that. The remedy for that is an independent, strong, confident, wealthy black community where kids have a confidence and that even if they meet racism, it's not going to impede them. They're going to be able to stand up to it.
Yeah.
In order to do that, you need banks in those communities. You need flourishing businesses. You need independence. This is what I've been doing for 35 years, sitting on the board of Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration, which is one of the most successful efforts in the country to build black businesses locally in a black neighborhood, and I know how to do that. The
Yes,
other
sir,
thing,
but I just want to do a follow up to that, because that's true. That's one of the things. And I know you went on record when you worked with the tribes saying that they decided, how they wanted to use those funds. And I guess what my pushback here is, one, I don't believe that it'll never happen. It's happening on the local and state level, all of the country now. Some cities are giving out cash in addition to other programs. So I wanted to ask you, are you familiar with the California Reparations Task Force that, put out a study, a 1,200-page study, which included 100 programs that you're talking about in addition to cash, because you still need cash for the down payment for the home. You still can buy a house cash.
I'm going to say this. I disagree with her. I don't believe, then again, I don't have much of a say, because from my knowledge, I'm not a descendant of slave. My parents decided to come here when they immigrated from Nigeria. So I know like where my streamline is. So I wouldn't say I have a say of how the reparations, if it happens, like how it should be given, but I am going to say my opinion. I don't think it should be cash. I think there's no longevity in cash. I think there's no longevity in just passing out pay stubs, if that's the case. Like, your rent is paid today. Now you're struggling next month. I feel like there's no longevity there. I think it should be given in a form of like education. Let's say somebody is a descendant of slave. They want to like apply for college or something, like through scholarships, through trade school, like forms of like how home ownership, whether it's like a certain rate that's like deducted or a certain amount that's deducted because they like are you get what I'm saying? Like I feel like it should be forms of that like whether it's like, even let's say a descendant of slave wants to have a business, like stuff like that. I feel like that has more longevity into it, instead of just, hey, you're a descendant of slave, here's $10,000. You're a descendant of slave, here's $5,000, because you can have that money. It's like, okay. That's just my opinion.
Mentioned that's causing us a lot of problems, and just advocating for loans only, putting people further in debt, doesn't necessarily always contribute to the wealth gap. So my question is very clear on whether you believe it'll happen or not. Are you against cash reparations in addition to all of the other programs as well?
No, I wouldn't be against it, but let me just point out something to you.
She's saying in addition to the other.
When a politician does not have the courage to do something, he creates a commission. And, it's easy to create a commission that makes these recommendations. All I'm saying here is I'm a practical person, and, the idea of going from legislation that creates these a commission set of recommendations to actually legislation and a remedy to these injuries. If you're betting on that, and you're dealing with reality, I don't see that it's going to happen. And so what I focus on are things that I believe I can change to make things better.
I agree. I'm not going to lie. I agree with that. I think essentially what he's saying, because Tez, she's trying to be optimistic, and she's saying like it's starting off on a local level, which I have to look into that because I don't think it's technically like been like, here's cash money, yours descendants. I don't think that's the case of it. But what he's saying is he's not going to spend his time giving you false hope, knowing he can't do anything about it, specifically when it comes to reparations. Obviously, you have to start somewhere, but he's saying that he knows he cannot go far when it comes to reparations. He thinks you may deserve it. He can advocate for it. He's in agreement for it. But where it really stems from is not in his mouth or in his seat. It stems from legislation. That's the first point before we even get to him. So I agree with that portion. And I think if you have someone like, for me, if someone's running for president and they're saying, I'm going to give you reparations, I'm running the other direction. Because I know, like, you're lying. Either you're lying or you're trying to, like, bait us. You're trying to bait, like, black folks in because it sounds good. Like, we're not dumb. Like, it's one thing to say, okay, you agree with reparations. You agree that we should, like, look into it. You agree that we need to see what we can do. That's one thing. But saying, I promise you reparations, it's like, okay. That's like what Joe Biden promised student loans. He knew he couldn't do that. He knew he couldn't do that. That's why a lot of people, it's like, his credibility is like, you knew you couldn't do that. Why'd you promise it? You feel me? But
two things that need to be changed is our education system, which is crippling a generation. It's a crime against a generation of black children, and we've got to fix that system. And everybody can get behind that, and politically it is doable. The other thing that we can do is to build opportunity for black neighborhoods to actually build businesses. And I know how to do that, and you can do it through empowerment zones, through tax credits, through loans, through direct grants, through education, because there's no accrued business knowledge in those, and there's no accrued income or inheritance money. And that has to be made available. So I believe, yes, we can do that grants. But if you're saying we're going to call it, we have to call it reparations, and it has to come in this form, I'm just saying to you, as a practical person I'm not a politician, but I've been around politics my whole life, and I know what's feasible and what's not. And I know that when a politician wants to pretend they're doing something, when they really don't have any intention to do it, they name a commission. I don't need a commission to know how to fix this. I don't need it because I've been doing it my whole life.
So basically what you're saying is you don't think this country will ever pass legislation for cash reparations on a national level, but you're focused on the things you can actually do and get done for black people.
Exactly.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is that it's not just cash, it's additional programs. And all I'm saying is to allow the descendants of those who were enslaved to have voice in that. And I know, you've had conversations.
Let me let her finish.
Said before, so I just want to ask you: is anybody on your team that is a reparationist that is actually a descendant of anyone enslaved? All I'm saying is they should have voice in deciding, how we should be repaired, whether you think it's realistic or not. Is anybody on your team that is a descendant of someone enslaved that is advising?
I've got two of the people on my team here today. Champ, who you guys know, and Jamel Hawley. Champ is running as a delegate for me, but Theo Wilson, who's from Chicago and who's really respected civil rights leader, and who's a very, very strong advocate for reparations. And I go back and forth with him. I mean, I have a lot of people on my team who don't agree with everything I say, but we fight about it, and we, and we try to figure things out. So I have these discussions with all the people on my team, the same that I'm having with you. But Theo is a lot meaner than you are about it. So I take a lot of flack, but I think we're all trying to figure out, how do you make this work? There's kids today who cannot wait. There's kids in schools in Compton, in Detroit, in Bed-Stuy and other neighborhoods around this country, and they can't wait for us to get a slow political process. There's an emergency going on. There's a fire. We're sending $140 billion to Ukraine. We could fix every black school in this country. We could give every one of these kids computers. My wife, who spends a lot of time going into black schools in neighborhoods like Detroit,
I'm just
he was in
like
Detroit
chilling,
recently.
like, I'm sorry.
And the school that she would visit in Detroit
This is very interesting.
had no fire alarms that worked. It didn't have a PA system that worked. It didn't have clocks in the classroom that worked. There were trash cans in the aisles because when the roof leaks, to catch the rain. And there's not a single computer in the school. These kids are, this is not the legacy of slavery. This is dooming them to a life. It's like it's like keeping people in shackles forever. This kind of education. It is an emergency that is as bad, in my view, as anything that's happening in the Ukraine. We've spent $8 trillion on useless wars over the past 20 years. If we spent that in this country, we could send every black child to the best college in this country getting whatever remedial education they wanted. And that's what I want to do. I want to take that money back from the military and start building Americans, and particularly in black neighborhoods, and without calling it reparations, we can do it.
I got a couple more questions for you. How does your family feel about you running, because a lot of them support Biden?
Yeah, a lot of them support Biden. Look, I have a big family. I at the Cape, I think over 4th of July weekend, there's 107 cousins.
Yikes. Who did the cooking?
Charlemagne. And the thing is, he's so serious about it too. He's like playing with his neck. He's like, "Yikes! Who did the cooking?"
I think it was DoorDash. And my family was raised where my father's father, my grandfather Joe Kennedy, did the same thing. Every night there's 11 of us. We come home and we talk about what we're going to argue about over the dinner table. And people take different sides and we argue about it. And we fight about stuff. But we all love each other. And my family, 5 of them work for the Biden administration. And Joe Biden's been an old friend of my family. If you look at any photo of Joe Biden, there's a statue of my father on the shelf behind him. So, there's a long relationship. They don't agree with me on the war. They don't agree with me on censorship. They don't agree with me on COVID. I can love them anyway. And, we need that all over our country. We need to be able to dispute and argue about things
and
without
then love
hating
each
on
other.
each other.
And then hug each other.
My family is an example. I love my family. The people who don't support me, I love them just the same. And, I understand it. I have compassion for people and kindness. And that's what, that we all have to learn to talk to each other with respect, with congeniality, without hating each other.
You think Biden, do you think he's fit to be president?
I don't think he's a strong president. And I think we need a strong president right now.
Why is he not strong?
I don't think he understands the implications of a lot of his policies. I think his policies are, he's surrounded by this group called the neoconservatives or neocons, who are very warmongering, who want to go to war with China. They wanted this war with Ukraine. I don't think that they're being clear to him that this war could have been easily negotiated and settled with no bloodshed. My son went over there and fought. My son, without telling me, went to Ukraine, joined a special forces unit, was a machine gunner in the Kharkiv offensive. And, I have great compassion for the Ukrainian people, but we are not serving their interests. We've killed 400,000 of them through our negligence as well as Putin. And I think Biden believes what he says about this war, and he's just wrong about it. I think he's surrounded by people who are not telling him the truth. And I don't think that he doesn't seem to have the energy or the curiosity to actually look at the other options.
Yeah, Mr. Kennedy, in June, you had mentioned somebody had asked you what was the most harmful when you compare 4 more years of Biden versus another term of Trump. And you said at the time you couldn't answer that. Do you still feel the same way? Do you see them being equally as harmful? Or
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm scared that Biden is going to get us into a nuclear war. Would I ever vote for Trump? No. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
So what would
And
you
also,
do?
my wife would divorce me.
Okay.
Damn.
So what would you do? I guess
yeah,
obviously
yeah,
run for president.
Yeah, nuclear war versus fascism.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the choice? I mean, what do people have? I mean, obviously you're running for president.
yeah,
so
that
you're
choice
giving
is
them another
the,
choice.
The choice.
Yeah, the
is,
choice is you. But
Yeah.
what do you tell the person? Like, what do they do if President Biden becomes a nominee? You know, how do they make that choice?
Yeah, I don't have a plan B. I'm planning on being the nominee.
This is the
so-
plan. Okay.
There's no plan B.
Will Smith, I think it was Will Smith or Denzel Washington, they said there's no need for plan B because it distracts you from plan A. It wasn't Eric Thomas. Somebody, a motivational speaker, said there's no need for plan B because it distracts you from plan A. Point blank, period. Y'all, I'm going to put it at a stop here. I'm actually going over my time. It's almost at 40 minutes. I hope you watch the whole thing, including the ads, because you know your girl monetized. But let me stop playing. But I really enjoyed this interview. I feel like this is very, very informative. I will say he needs to cut his answers down, like condense it a little bit, because he can lose viewers. Like for me, I love politics and policies, and I love these interviews, so I'm going to watch it thoroughly. But somebody who's trying to like get to know him more, I would say for him to like simplify his answers a little bit and break it down a little bit more, because I feel like they could have touched on more topics. But yeah, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's doing his thing. I'm not gonna lie. Like, there's some stuff in there that I kind of disagreed with him, like eyebrow raising, but he just comes off as so humane, like a human, like normal, regular. He doesn't come off like very like, well, golly gee, I need to do that. You know, I can run for the American people. You know, I am the best. Like, he doesn't come off that. He comes off as someone who's actually genuine. Like, he actually just wants to like save the country in a sense. His transparency is really cool too. I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Comment down below. What do you think of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? What is things he could work on? His strong points? Do you think he can actually beat Biden out the primary? Me personally, I feel like if they did a debate, they're not going to, but if the DNC were to host a debate and it was him, Biden, Marianne Williamson on the debate stage, I feel like he can wash them. Well, I think he could wash Biden and Marianne Williamson respectfully, though. I feel like he will shine through on a debate stage, 110%. I truly believe that. But obviously, Biden being the incumbent, they never really do debates when an incumbent, for one, even though I still want to say debate. Two, Biden is leading by 30 plus. So it's like, why would he even debate anyway? Why would he give that chance? But the main thing, if someone on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s team is watching this, the main thing that's really going to help this man, you have to push him on social media. Put him on platforms, put him on podcasts, put him all it takes is one viral clip. Literally. All it takes is one viral clip, and so his name is going to keep running. People are going to keep his name in his mouth. People are going to keep his name in their mouth. They're going to keep talking about him. Whether they're talking about him because it's something good or whether they're talking about him because something bad. When his name starts trending on Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, people are going to click and learn more about him. I think that is the best way, in my opinion, as of right now, to push Robert F. Kennedy Jr. if I was on his team. It's like you have to get him in the eyes of the people, because mainstream like cable, people aren't watching that. People aren't watching cable like they used to. Like, just being honest. That's just my suggestion. But let me know your thoughts on the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you're notified whenever I post a new video. I love y'all all. Love all the support. Appreciate y'all. Make sure you follow me on my social media. With that being said, God bless y'all. This is Udo at Connecting People with Policy. Toodles.